Sir, I'm sorry, it's leukemia. The doctor's words echoed in his ears like a gunshot. Darius Colter's world shattered in a sterile Arkansas hospital room. He thought his biggest problem was work stress until life threw him a battle he never signed up for. Before we begin, please like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments where are you watching from. United States, Canada, Malaysia, UK, Australia, Jamaica. Mr. Colter, can I see you in my office? Darius's stomach twisted. The voice belonged to Evelyn Harcourt, the CEO of Harcourt Analytics, a woman whose name made boardrooms fall silent. He stood from his cubicle, heart pounding, aware that he hadn't finished the report she'd requested 2 days ago. His once perfect record had turned into missed deadlines and quiet apologies. He smoothed his wrinkled shirt and walked toward the glass-walled office that overlooked downtown Little Rock, Arkansas. The city outside buzzed with life, coffee shops, traffic, ambition, but inside Darius's world felt small and suffocating. 2 weeks ago, he was a proud data analyst with a plan. Now all he could think about was hospital monitors and the sound of his daughter's weak breathing. When he stepped inside, Evelyn didn't speak immediately. She watched him with that sharp, assessing gaze only CEOs had, the kind that could slice through excuses. Her desk was neat, her posture regal, yet behind the power there was something human, a hint of exhaustion, maybe loneliness. Darius, she said softly, you've been one of our best analysts for 3 years, but lately you're not here. Your numbers are off, your focus is gone, talk to me, what's happening? He opened his mouth, closed it, then let out a shaky breath. It's my daughter, he whispered, Ashley. Evelyn leaned forward, is she okay? He shook his head, his voice cracking. No ma'am, she's 8. She has leukemia, the doctor said it's aggressive, I've been trying to work through it but, his voice failed. I can't lose her, she's all I've got. Silence filled the room, the hum of the air conditioner sounded like thunder. Evelyn's usual composure slipped just for a second. She took off her glasses and rubbed her temple. I'm sorry, Darius, I can't imagine what that feels like. He nodded, ashamed of the tears in his eyes. I'm sorry I've let the work slide, I'll do better, I just... Stop, her tone was gentle but firm. This isn't about the work, she paused, searching his face. You said she's in treatment? Yes, chemotherapy, but insurance doesn't cover half of it. I've sold my car, borrowed from friends, I'm just trying to keep her alive. Evelyn's throat tightened. She'd faced high-stakes negotiations and billion-dollar deals, but nothing hit her like this man's quiet desperation. Darius, she said, standing, take the rest of the day off, actually take the week, I'll make some calls. He blinked, ma'am. She gave him a small smile, let me help, send me the hospital's name and your doctor's contact, we'll figure something out. He wanted to protest, his pride screamed no, but his love for Ashley whispered please. Thank you, he murmured, voice breaking. When he left her office, Evelyn stood by the window for a long time, staring at the skyline. A child, leukemia. The words reopened a wound she thought had healed. Her ex-husband had left her years ago after she failed to conceive. I didn't sign up for a barren marriage, he'd said before walking out. Maybe this was her second chance, not as a mother but as a human being. The next morning, Darius sat by Ashley's hospital bed. The room smelled faintly of antiseptic and lavender lotion, Ashley's favorite scent. Her skin looked pale against the white sheets, but her smile still had light in it. Hey Daddy, she whispered, you look tired. He chuckled weakly, guess I didn't sleep much. Did you bring my tablet? I want to watch those funny cat videos again. Sure did, he handed it to her, his heart clenching. Her fingers trembled as she tapped the screen. Moments later, there was a soft knock at the door. Mr. Colter. He turned and froze. Evelyn Harcourt stood there, out of place in her sleek navy suit among IV poles and cartoon stickers. Ms. Harcourt, he stammered, rising to his feet. I told you I'd make some calls, she smiled gently, stepping closer. May I come in? Ashley's eyes widened. Daddy, who's that? This is my boss, Darius said softly, Ms. Evelyn. Evelyn crouched beside the bed, her expensive perfume mixing oddly with the scent of hospital sanitizer. Hi, Ashley, she said. Your dad tells me you're quite the brave young lady. Ashley grinned shyly. I'm trying, the doctors say I have to be strong. Well, lucky for you, Evelyn said, smiling. I happen to be very good at helping people win hard battles. Something in the child's face lit up. Evelyn reached into her purse and pulled out a small plush toy, a golden retriever with a red ribbon. This guy's name is Winston, he's yours now, he's good luck. Ashley hugged the toy like it was treasure. Thank you. Darius's throat tightened. For the first time in weeks, Ashley's laugh filled the room again. Before leaving, Evelyn spoke quietly to the doctor outside. Send every invoice to my office, she said. Chemotherapy, tests, everything, no limits. The doctor blinked. Ms. Harcourt, are you sure? She nodded, completely. Later that night, Darius sat alone in the hospital hallway, tears blurring his vision. He just checked the balance of his medical account. The pending bills were marked as paid in full. He didn't know why this woman cared, but for the first time in months, hope didn't feel like a lie. Inside the room, Ashley clutched Winston and smiled in her sleep. Evelyn's perfume still lingered in the air, a reminder that maybe, just maybe, miracles sometimes wear business suits. Ms. Evelyn, you came back. Ashley's voice filled the hospital room like a burst of sunlight. Her tiny arms stretched out the moment Evelyn walked in, clutching a bouquet of balloons and a tote bag that looked far too cheerful for the sterile hallways of Arkansas Children's Hospital. Evelyn laughed, her polished heels clicking softly on the tile. Of course I came back. You didn't think I'd leave Winston here without checking on him, did you? Ashley giggled, hugging her stuffed golden retriever tighter. He missed you, Ms. Evelyn. Darius looked up from his chair by the window. He hadn't shaved in days, but his tired eyes softened. You didn't have to do all this, ma'am. You've already done more than enough. Evelyn placed the bag on the table. I didn't do this because I had to, I did it because I wanted to. Inside were coloring books, 2 pairs of fuzzy socks, and a small tablet loaded with cartoons and children's songs. Ashley squealed with excitement. For a moment, Darius saw something in Evelyn's face, something warm, almost maternal. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the Arkansas River, Evelyn sat beside Ashley's bed, holding her hand through another round of chemo. The beeping of machines filled the quiet, but Evelyn's voice, steady, kind, kept the little girl grounded. Do you know what happens when you believe in good things, Ashley? Evelyn asked. Ashley's eyelids fluttered weakly. They come true. Exactly, Evelyn whispered. And you, sweetheart, are going to be one of those good things that comes true. Darius stood in the corner, watching this powerful woman talk to his daughter like she'd known her forever. He couldn't help but wonder what made her so invested. After Ashley drifted off to sleep, Evelyn turned toward him. How are you holding up? He let out a weary laugh. Me, I'm fine, I just keep moving, you know. You don't look fine. Doesn't matter what I look like, he replied. She's the one fighting for her life. Evelyn tilted her head, studying him. You ever let anyone help you, Darius? He hesitated. Not really. Folks usually walk away once things get hard. Her eyes softened. Not everyone walks away. Days turned into weeks. Evelyn kept coming, sometimes with books, sometimes with takeout from a local soul food spot she'd discovered. She even started bringing spreadsheets from work for Darius to review while he sat by Ashley's bed. You really want me working here? He asked one afternoon, raising a brow. Evelyn smiled. I want you to feel normal. You love what you do, don't lose that. He chuckled. You always this bossy outside the office. Always, she teased back. Ashley giggled from her bed, watching them. You two sound funny together. They both laughed, but the comment lingered longer than either of them expected. By the second month, the hospital staff knew Evelyn by name. Nurses smiled when she walked in. Doctors gave her updates like she was family. And in some strange way, she had become just that. Ashley adored her. Every morning she'd ask, Daddy, is Ms. Evelyn coming today? And when she did, the child's whole face lit up. Evelyn found herself rearranging board meetings and skipping charity galas just to be there for chemo sessions. Somewhere along the way, business obligations took a back seat to bedtime stories and laughter. One afternoon, while Ashley napped, Evelyn and Darius sat in the hospital cafeteria, sipping coffee. So, he said, leaning back, you ever tell me why you're doing all this? She looked into her cup for a long time before answering, maybe because I couldn't have children. He froze, unsure how to respond. My ex-husband left because of it, she continued quietly, said he wanted a family. I told myself I didn't need one. I threw myself into work, built an empire to fill the silence, she smiled faintly, but that silence never really went away. Darius's voice softened, I'm sorry. She met his gaze. Don't be. Some things break you so new things can grow. Maybe Ashley's helping me heal a part of myself I didn't know was still hurting. He looked away, swallowing hard. She's got that effect on people. Weeks later, the hospital decided to host a small event for kids undergoing treatment. A superhero day. Ashley wore a glittery pink cape and a bright smile that masked her fatigue. Evelyn showed up in jeans and a denim jacket, something no one in her company had ever seen her wear. When Ashley saw her, she gasped, Ms. Evelyn, you look like a cool mom. Everyone laughed, including Darius, who nearly spilled his coffee. Evelyn blushed for the first time in years. I'll take that as a compliment, she said, ruffling Ashley's curls. That day, Evelyn stayed until the end, helping other children with crafts, taking pictures, and even dancing to a silly pop song that made the nurses clap along. Darius watched her from across the room, realizing he was seeing a version of her no one else got to see. Not the CEO, not the power figure, just a woman with a kind heart. And for the first time since his ex-wife left him, he felt something shift inside, hope, maybe even something like love. That night when Evelyn dropped by one last time, Ashley was half asleep. Ms. Evelyn, she murmured, if I get better, can we all go to the zoo? Evelyn smiled, brushing hair from her forehead. Of course we can, sweetheart. Promise. Promise. As she turned to leave, Darius stopped her at the door. Evelyn, thank you. She looked back, her eyes glistening. Don't thank me, Darius, just believe she's going to make it. Their eyes held for a heartbeat too long, an unspoken understanding, something raw and tender hanging between them. When she left, Darius exhaled deeply, running a hand over his face. Man, he muttered under his breath, smiling faintly, what are you doing to me, woman? Inside the room, Ashley stirred in her sleep, whispering, Ms. Evelyn, like a prayer. Outside, the moon hung over Little Rock, glowing soft and silver. And in that quiet Arkansas night, something beautiful was starting to grow, something neither of them had planned for but both of them desperately needed. Daddy, am I dying? The question sliced through the room like a blade. Darius froze, his coffee halfway to his lips, his eyes locking onto Ashley's frail little body. The beeping of the heart monitor filled the silence that followed. He set the cup down slowly. Baby girl, don't you ever say that again. Ashley blinked up at him, her skin pale, her lips cracked, but the doctor said the bad cells came back. His throat closed, he had heard the same words that morning, relapse. The cancer that had begun shrinking was flaring up again. The doctors called it a setback. To Darius, it felt like the end of the world. He forced a smile, his voice trembling. You're not dying, sweetheart, you're fighting, and we're fighting with you. At that moment, the door opened and Evelyn walked in, her face pale beneath the fluorescent lights. She had gotten the same call. 2 months of hope had turned into another round of chemo, this one harsher, meaner. The side effects came fast: hair loss, nausea, exhaustion. Ashley cried through the nights, her tiny body shaking. Evelyn was there for every scream, every tear. She stopped being Ms. Harcourt at the hospital. The nurses now called her Ashley's other mom. Darius would sit by the window, his hand buried in his hair, trying to hide his pain. Evelyn sat beside him in silence. Sometimes she didn't speak at all, she just placed her hand over his, and somehow that was enough. Why are you still here? He whispered one night, unable to meet her eyes. Because you need me, she said simply, and so does she. Days blurred into weeks. The once lively hospital room was now dim and quiet, filled with soft music and whispered prayers. One rainy evening, Evelyn arrived late after a board meeting. Her hair was damp, her eyes red-rimmed from crying in her car before coming in. Darius looked up, exhausted. She's been asking for you, he murmured. Evelyn walked over, brushing a trembling hand across Ashley's cheek. Hey, sunshine. Ashley stirred, smiling faintly. Ms. Evelyn, I had a dream. You and Daddy were dancing in our living room. Evelyn laughed softly, though her eyes filled with tears. That sounds like a good dream. Ashley nodded weakly. Can we make it real when I get home? Of course, Evelyn whispered, her voice breaking. You just get better first. Later that night, Darius sat alone in the chapel, staring at the flickering candles. He wasn't a church man, but that night he found himself praying. God, if you're listening, don't take her, take me, take everything I got, just don't take my baby. Behind him, soft footsteps echoed. Evelyn appeared in the doorway, her eyes glistening. You shouldn't be here alone, she said gently. He chuckled dryly. Guess I'm not good company these days. Evelyn walked closer, sitting beside him on the wooden pew. The light from the candles painted gold across her face. You ever think, she said quietly, that maybe we were meant to find each other in this mess? He turned to her, brow furrowed. I mean, she hesitated, choosing her words. You needed someone to help you fight, and I needed a reason to care again. Their eyes met, and for the first time, neither of them looked away. The next morning, Ashley's condition worsened. The doctors moved quickly, adjusting machines and whispering orders. Darius stood frozen, his heart hammering in his chest. Evelyn held his arm to keep him steady. The monitors beeped faster, nurses rushed in. Then silence. Stay with me, Ashley, Darius shouted, his voice cracking, please. Evelyn covered her mouth, tears streaming down her face as the doctors worked frantically. Minutes felt like hours. Finally, one of the nurses exhaled, relieved. She's stabilizing, she's breathing again. Darius collapsed to his knees, sobbing. Evelyn knelt beside him, wrapping her arms around his shoulders. Neither spoke, they just cried together, shaking in the middle of the hospital room. For days, Darius barely left Ashley's side. Evelyn arranged for a recliner to be brought in so he could sleep in comfort. She made sure the hospital's kitchen prepared his favorite meal every night. She even hired a nurse to sit with Ashley when he needed to shower or rest. One night, when he finally managed to fall asleep, Evelyn sat by Ashley's bed and brushed her hair softly. You've got his strength, she whispered, but you've also got his stubbornness. Ashley smiled faintly, her eyes half open. Are you my mommy now? Evelyn froze. Why would you say that, sweetheart? 'Cause you love Daddy, I can tell. Evelyn's lips parted, but no words came. Ashley giggled weakly. It's okay, Ms. Evelyn, I want you to. Tears welled up in Evelyn's eyes. You're supposed to be sleeping, little one. Ashley closed her eyes again, whispering, then you can tell me tomorrow. The next week brought the first good news in months. The treatment was finally working. The cancer cells were shrinking again. When the doctor told them, Evelyn burst into tears right there in the hallway. Darius pulled her into a hug, and for the first time she didn't hold back. You did this, he said softly. No, she whispered against his chest, we did this. A week later, Ashley was well enough to sit up in bed again. She wore a bright yellow headscarf and that big, brave smile that had carried them all this far. Evelyn brought her a small cupcake with pink frosting and a single candle. What's this for? Ashley asked. For making it through the storm, Evelyn said. Darius smiled. Make a wish, baby girl. Ashley squeezed her eyes shut and whispered something they couldn't quite hear. When she blew out the candle, both adults clapped like it was the 4th of July. Evelyn leaned closer. What did you wish for? Ashley grinned. You'll see. They laughed, unaware of the small miracle that was still unfolding quietly between them. That night, as Evelyn drove home through the empty streets of Little Rock, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Darius. I don't know what tomorrow looks like, but if you ever doubt that you've changed 2 lives, don't. She read it twice, her eyes misting, then she looked up at the night sky and whispered, thank you. Because somehow, in the middle of sickness and chaos, love had started to bloom. And if you've made it this far, maybe this story touched a small part of you too. Maybe it reminded you that even in the hardest seasons, kindness still matters. So before you scroll away, take a second, subscribe, like, share, not for me, but for the next story that might heal someone's heart the way Evelyn healed Darius and Ashley. Because somewhere out there, another family's still fighting, and your one click might be the hope they need next. The spring sun spilled through the hospital windows, golden and warm for the first time in months. Darius couldn't remember the last time he'd seen Ashley laugh so hard. She sat up in bed, cheeks round again, a bandage still taped to her arm but her spirit shining brighter than ever. Winston, the little stuffed golden retriever, was tucked under her elbow as she colored in a new book Evelyn had brought. "Daddy, look," she said, holding up her page proudly. "I made the sun sparkle." Darius smiled, feeling his throat tighten. "You sure did, baby, you sure did." The doctors called it remission. The cancer was gone, no sign, no shadow. And though Darius had thanked every nurse and prayed every prayer, deep down he knew who had really helped make it possible. Evelyn Harcourt. She walked into the room like she always did, poised but soft, her heels clicking against the linoleum, her smile wide enough to light up the floor. "Am I seeing a superhero up and out of bed?" she teased, crossing her arms playfully. Ashley giggled, "Super Ashley the Cancer Crusher." Evelyn laughed, pretending to shield her eyes. "Oh, I can't even look, your powers are too strong." Darius chuckled quietly from his chair, watching the two of them banter like mother and daughter. For months, Evelyn had been the strength he didn't know he needed. She walked into his nightmare and somehow turned it into light. Later that day, the doctor came in with a smile so big it barely fit his face. "Mr. Colter, Ms. Harcourt," he said, "I wanted to personally let you know Ashley's officially in full remission. We'll monitor her closely, but she's beaten it, the scans are clear." Darius didn't move at first, the words needed time to sink in. Then, like a dam breaking, he covered his face with his hands and began to sob. Deep, shaking sobs that echoed with every sleepless night and desperate prayer. Evelyn's hand found his shoulder. "You did it," she whispered. He looked up, eyes red, and shook his head. "We did it." When Ashley was discharged, the hospital staff gathered in the hallway to cheer her out. She wore a little white dress and a blue headscarf, holding Evelyn's hand in one and Darius's in the other. The three of them walked through the corridor like a family, because in every way that mattered they were. Outside, the air felt brand new. The smell of cut grass and rain filled Darius's lungs. Ashley spun in circles, laughing, free for the first time in almost a year. "Daddy, look," she shouted, chasing a butterfly. Evelyn smiled at her, the corners of her eyes soft with pride. "She's got your spirit." Darius turned to her, his voice quiet. "And your heart." She looked away, flustered. "Don't go making me emotional in the parking lot, Colter." He laughed, a real laugh this time, one that sounded like hope. The next few weeks were a blur of joy. Evelyn had thrown a small, welcome home cookout in her backyard, inviting the few people Ashley remembered from the hospital. There were burgers, laughter, music, and the smell of barbecue drifting through the warm Arkansas evening. Ashley sat on Evelyn's lap while Darius grilled. "Ms. Evelyn, you're a bad dancer," she teased, giggling. Evelyn gasped. "What, you didn't just say that?" Ashley nodded seriously. "You need practice, maybe Daddy can help you." The adults exchanged a quick glance, then laughed it off, but the air between them felt different. Warmer. As the weeks passed, Evelyn found herself spending more time at Darius's modest little house on Maplewood Avenue. Sometimes she brought dinner, sometimes she brought paperwork she and Darius worked through together. But mostly she just brought peace. Ashley would curl up on the couch beside her, showing her drawings or telling her stories about her new school. And every time Evelyn looked down at that little girl, alive, healthy, smiling, something inside her healed a little more. One evening, as the sun began to dip behind the trees, Evelyn and Darius sat on the porch after putting Ashley to bed. Fireflies danced in the humid Arkansas air. "She's sleeping like a rock," Darius said softly, sipping his coffee. "First time she's done that in months." Evelyn smiled, her eyes tracing the stars. "She's earned it." They sat in silence for a while, comfortable, the kind of quiet that said everything words couldn't. "You know," he said finally, "I never thought I'd see her smile again." Evelyn looked at him, her eyes gentle. "You never stopped fighting for it." He turned to her. "Neither did you." Their gazes held longer this time, the night hummed around them. And just when the silence started to say too much, Ashley's little voice drifted from the doorway. "Daddy." They both turned. She was standing there, barefoot in her pajamas, clutching Winston. "What's up, Peanut?" Darius asked. Ashley looked at Evelyn shyly, then at her dad. "I had a dream again." Evelyn smiled, the dancing one. Ashley nodded, you two were married and I was wearing a pink dress. The porch went silent. Evelyn blinked, Darius froze. Ashley rubbed her eyes sleepily, can you make that dream real, please? Neither of them knew what to say. Evelyn's lips parted but no words came out. Ashley smiled, hugging Winston tight, I want you both forever. Then she turned and went back inside like she hadn't just flipped both their worlds upside down. That night Darius barely slept. He lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying his daughter's voice over and over. You two were married, I want you both forever. Evelyn, in her penthouse across town, sat on her balcony doing the same. She tried to drown her thoughts in a glass of red wine, but the image of Ashley's sleepy eyes and tiny voice wouldn't fade. For months she'd told herself she was just helping, that this was charity duty. But it was not anymore. Somewhere between the hospital visits and the bedtime stories, she'd stopped being a CEO and started being home. The next morning, Evelyn drove to Darius's house. She didn't even call first. He was out front, washing his car in an old t-shirt, the morning sun catching the water as it splashed off the hood. He looked up when he saw her and smiled softly. Didn't expect you this early, he said. I couldn't sleep, she admitted. They stood in silence for a beat, the sound of distant birds filling the air. About what Ashley said last night, he began. Evelyn held up a hand, her voice barely a whisper, she's just a child. I know, he said, but sometimes kids see things before adults do. She met his gaze, and what do you see, Darius? He took a step closer, his tone gentle but certain. I see a woman who saved my little girl, who showed me that miracles aren't always loud, they're just human. Evelyn's eyes shimmered, and I see a man who made me believe in family again. Neither spoke after that, the moment hung between them, fragile and beautiful. Ashley's laughter echoed from inside the house. And as they both turned toward the sound, they knew something had shifted, not forced, not rushed, just real. A miracle had brought them together, but love was about to make them stay. The sound of rain tapping against the kitchen window filled the silence of a Saturday morning. Darius poured 2 cups of coffee, one for himself and one for the woman sitting at his dining table, scrolling through spreadsheets like she owned the place, which, technically, she didn't, but somehow she fit there like she always had. Evelyn Harcourt, CEO, billionaire, and now a woman wearing a borrowed hoodie from a single dad's laundry pile. Never thought I'd see the day you'd trade your morning latte for diner coffee, Darius teased, setting her mug down. Evelyn looked up, smirking. Never thought I'd see the day you'd learn to make coffee that doesn't taste like burnt toast. They laughed, the easy kind of laugh that comes when two souls finally stop pretending they're strangers. Ashley's footsteps thundered from upstairs. Daddy, Ms. Evelyn, she called, come see. They both rushed up to find her standing in front of her bedroom mirror wearing a sparkly pink dress and her favorite headscarf. Winston, the stuffed dog, sat on her bed, watching like a proud friend. Do I look like a princess? Ashley asked, twirling. You look like a miracle, Evelyn said softly. That night, Darius couldn't shake what Ashley had said weeks ago about her dream about marriage. It had replayed in his mind like a song he couldn't turn off. He'd spent nights staring at the ceiling, asking himself if it was crazy. A CEO and a single dad from Little Rock, what did they have in common? Everything that mattered, maybe. Love didn't care about titles, it cared about presence, and she'd been there when no one else was. So one Friday evening, when the sky turned shades of peach and gold, Darius made a decision. He called her and said, meet me at Riverfront Park, 7 o'clock. She hesitated on the other end. Is everything okay? Just trust me, he said, please. Evelyn wasn't used to not knowing. She ran companies, controlled outcomes, but something in his voice made her say yes without another question. When she arrived, the park was quiet. The lights shimmered on the Arkansas River and the air smelled like rain about to fall. Darius stood there in a simple navy jacket, holding a small box in his hands. Darius, she said softly, smiling, what's all this? He took a breath. I've spent most of my life waiting for the other shoe to drop, for good things to walk away before I could believe in them, but then you showed up. Her eyes glistened. You don't have to say this. Yes, I do, he interrupted gently. You didn't just save my daughter's life, you saved mine, you reminded me what faith feels like. He opened the box. Inside was a silver ring, simple, beautiful, nothing like the diamonds Evelyn was used to. Evelyn Harcourt, he said, his voice trembling, you've been our miracle, but I don't want you to just visit our story anymore, I want you in it. Will you marry me? The wind caught her hair, carrying the faint sound of river waves. Evelyn stood still, her hand over her heart, tears slipping down her cheeks. She laughed softly through them. Darius Colter, you realize you're proposing to your boss. He smiled, then maybe it's time we change job titles. Evelyn laughed again, one of those deep, genuine laughs she hadn't let herself feel in years. Then she stepped forward, took his face in her hands, and whispered, yes. When he kissed her, it wasn't fireworks or a movie scene, it was quiet, real, the kind of kiss that makes you believe you're finally home. The wedding was small, just family, a few close friends, and the nurses who'd fought alongside them. Ashley was the flower girl, throwing petals with a grin so wide it could have lit up the whole of Arkansas. Evelyn wore a cream dress that fluttered softly in the breeze, and Darius couldn't stop looking at her. When the pastor said, you may kiss the bride, Ashley covered her eyes and squealed, "Ewa," before giggling uncontrollably. The laughter that followed wasn't just joy, it was relief, it was survival. For the first time in years, everything felt right. Months later, life found a new rhythm. Evelyn still ran Harcourt Analytics, but she worked fewer nights. Darius helped her streamline the company's data division and became her quiet partner in both business and life. Ashley thrived, back in school, full of light and proudly telling anyone who'd listen that her bonus mom ran a tech empire. Sometimes, Evelyn would catch Darius watching her across the dinner table, his eyes filled with quiet gratitude. And sometimes she'd watch him dance with Ashley in the living room, their laughter echoing against the walls, and realize that this was what she'd been missing all her life. Not success, not power. Belonging. One evening, while they sat on the porch watching fireflies, Ashley crawled between them, resting her head on Evelyn's lap. Ms. Evelyn, she murmured sleepily. Yes, sweetheart. Thank you for saying yes. Evelyn smiled, brushing her hair back. Oh, honey, I should be the one thanking you. Ashley grinned, you're welcome. Darius chuckled, you're something else, kid. She looked up, her voice soft but sure. No, Daddy, we're something else. And with that, she drifted off to sleep, her tiny hands still clutching Winston. Evelyn watched her for a long moment, then looked at Darius. She's right, you know. He nodded, slipping his arm around her shoulders. She usually is. The night was quiet except for the hum of crickets and the soft rustle of leaves. The air smelled of magnolia and earth, life after rain. Evelyn leaned her head on his shoulder. Do you ever think about how close we came to losing everything? Every day, he whispered, and it makes me hold on tighter. As the porch light flickered, the camera of life seemed to pull back slowly, revealing 3 silhouettes framed in golden light. A woman who'd thought she'd never be a mother. A man who'd thought he'd never find love again. And a little girl who believed in both before they ever did. Sometimes the most powerful miracles aren't thunderous or divine. They come quietly, dressed like ordinary people who choose to stay when life gets hard. So if this story moved you, even a little, take a second before you go. Subscribe, share, leave a comment for the fighters, the caregivers, the single parents, and the quiet heroes who show up every day. Because maybe, just maybe, your click is how someone else finds the hope they've been waiting for. And as Evelyn whispered goodnight to her daughter, their daughter, she smiled at the stars and thought, sometimes love doesn't find you until you've lost everything else. But when it does, it saves you.